2.8, slope and equations of lines. The slope, if you remember from Algebra 1, of a line that contains 2 points is given by the formula m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, where x1, y1 and x2, y2 are point number 1 and point number 2. So when we go to calculate slope, we want to make sure we designate one of the points to be point number 1 and the other point to be point number 2. So we can have x1, y1, and the other point might be our x2, y2. Okay, so when we go to calculate slope, it's going to be m is equal to, and we'll subtract the y's on top and subtract the y's on the bottom. So we're going to do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And we're just going to replace those values, or replace those with values. So my y2 in this case I have labeled as 3, right? 3 is my y2. My y1 is 2. My x2 is 7, and my x1 is 0, and I will just solve this. So 3 minus 2 is 1, and 7 minus 0 is 7, so my slope is 1 over 7. In the next one, we have again our x1, y1, and our x2, y2. And m is going to equal, again, we'll do y2 minus y1, so y2 is 2, y1 is 6, x2 is 4, and x1 is negative 1. And now we'll just simplify this. So we get on top, that is 2 minus 6, we get negative 4. And on the bottom, 4 minus negative 1 is positive 5. So my slope is negative 4/5. In part C, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to label x1, y1, and x2, y2. Okay, so my slope again is going to be subtracting the y's over subtracting the x's. So let's see, y2 is 3, y1 is also 3, x2 is 8, and x1 is negative 2. So in the numerator I get 0, in the denominator 8 minus negative 2 is 10, and 0 divided by 10 is 0. So I'm going to get 0 for my slope here. And lastly, x1, y1, x2, y2. Again, I'm going to be subtracting the y's, subtracting the x's. So y2 is negative 4 minus y1, which is 2. x2, which is 3, minus x1, which is also 3. That's going to give me negative 6 over 0, and that is called undefined. We cannot divide by 0. A nice kind of trick for remembering this is that it is okay to have 0 in the numerator, but it is no good to have 0 in the denominator. So that will give us an undefined, but it's okay to have 0 up top. Okay. So slopes of parallel lines, we know that if we have lines that are parallel, their slopes are going to be the same. So they both have to have the same value. For perpendicular lines, though, they are opposite reciprocals, meaning we change the sign. If it's plus, we make it minus. If it's minus, we make it plus. And then we flip it over. For example, if I have one of my slopes is 2 over 3, then the perpendicular slope would be negative 3 over 2. Change it from positive to a negative, and then flip it over. Okay, so let's take a look at this next one. We are given point A, B, C, and D, and we want to determine the relationship between AB, line AB, and line CD. So first we want to see, okay, line AB is going to be connecting these 2 points together. Let's calculate the slope of that line. So let's see, the slope for line AB is going to be equal to, and we'll subtract the y's, subtract the x's, so x1, y1, x2, y2. So that's going to be 2 minus negative 2 on top, and on the bottom that's 9 minus negative 3. So that's going to give us 3 over 12, which gives us 1/4. For my other line, CD, it's going to connect C and D together, so let's find the slope of CD. Okay, again, we're going to subtract y's, subtract x's. So we have x1, y1, x2, y2. So that's negative 2 minus 6, and that's 5 minus 3. So that's going to give me negative 8 over 2, or that's going to give me negative 4. Okay, so if they are going to be parallel, then they would have to have the same slope. If they're going to be perpendicular, they would have to be opposite reciprocals, or none of the above would apply, and then they're neither of those things. So in this case, they are definitely not the same slope, right? They're two different numbers. But if I were to take 1 over 4, flip it over, that would give me 4 over 1, which is really the same as 4, and change it from positive to negative, that means these are going to be perpendicular. If they were parallel, they would both have to be 1/4 or both be -4. Okay. In example 3, we want to find the values of x so that the line passes through x comma 5 and 6 comma -1, and then is going to be perpendicular to the line that passes through these other 2 points. Okay. So we want to find that x value. So the first thing we need to do is actually figure out what is the slope of the perpendicular line. So we have 2 lines, they're perpendicular. Let's find the slope of the second line, the one that has all the information. So let's find the slope of this guy. So m is going to equal, we have x1, y1, x2, y2. So that's -7 minus 3, and that's -3 minus 2. So that's going to give us a slope of -10 over -5, or +2. All right, so +2 is the slope of one of the lines. So we want the perpendicular slope. So what would be perpendicular to 2? Well, change it to negative and flip it over. Technically, it's 2 over 1, so that would be -1/2. Okay, so we want -1/2 to be what we get when we take the slope. So let's go ahead and take the slope of the second line. So we have x, well, really we have x, right? x1, y1, x2, y2. So when I go to take the slope, right, it would be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And let's just kind of plug in what we do know. So m is going to be -1/2. And that's what we got from before. Y2 we have is -1. We have y1 is 5, x2 is 6, and then x1 is x. So now we have to go ahead and solve for x. So what we could do here is actually cross multiply on a diagonal. Okay, so we have -1 times 6 minus x is equal to 2 times -1 minus 5. All right, so we're going to distribute the -1 here. That's -6 plus x. Over here, we can actually do the parentheses, right? That's a -6 inside. So we have -6 plus x is equal to -12, and then we're going to add that 6 over. We're going to get that x is equal to -6. -12 plus 6 is -6. Okay. And the next one, we want to graph the line that satisfies the description. So we have an undefined slope, okay? Anything that is an undefined slope is going to have a 0 in the denominator, okay? And it has to pass through the point -3, -4. So let's plot -3, -4. -3, -4 will be right here. That's where this is -3 and this is -4, okay? All right, so here's my point. If it's an undefined slope, that means it is a vertical line, if you remember from Algebra 1. So there's my vertical line. Okay, the next one says our slope is -2 when we pass through 8, 1. So let's plot that 8, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, up 1. Okay, so there's my point. If my slope is -2, technically that's -2 over 1. And remember, that is my rise over run. So that means I'm going to go down 2, but right 1. Down 2, right 1. And I can keep doing that. Down and right, though, is the same as going up and left. So you could continue in the other direction as well. And then we'll just connect the dots. Oops. There we go. All right, non-vertical line equation. So the slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. That's the one you're most familiar with. And then in Algebra 1, you also saw one that was called point-slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So let's go back to slope-intercept for a second. We call it slope-intercept because this number m is my slope. It tells me how I move. And this number b is my y-intercept. When I go to graph, it tells me where to begin. M for move, B for begin. When I look at my point slope form, m is still my slope. That hasn't changed at all. But x1, y1 is a point on the line, not necessarily the y-intercept, but it is a point on the line. All right, so we want to write an equation in slope-intercept form. That's y equals mx plus b, given this information. So our slope is 6. That means m equals 6. And our y-intercept is -3. That means b equals -3. And then we want to graph it. Very simply, that's just y equals 6x minus 3. So we'll plot -3 on the y-axis, and then 6 really means up 6 over 1. So we'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 1. And we could keep counting or just call it a day there. In example 6, we want point slope form. So that's our y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. My slope is my m, and my point is my x1, y1. Okay, so that's y minus 8 equals -3/5 times x minus -10, or I could just say plus +10, because that really is the same thing. Okay, now I'm going to plot this point and count the slope from there. So let's kind of get the whole thing showing. We need to go -10, 8. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's my -10. And then I need to go up 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's my point. My slope is -3/5, which means I'm going to count down 3, right 5. And I could keep going if I wanted to. Okay. But this is my x1, whoops, my x1, y1 from here. Okay. All right. Next, we want to write an equation of the line through each pair of points in slope-intercept. That's y equals mx plus b. So we need to first find our m. So m, we have x1, y1, x2, y2. Let's find our m. So m is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm just filling in what they're equal to. That's -9 over -6, and that's going to simplify to +3/2. Okay, so we have our m. So let's think about that equation, y equals mx plus b. Let's plug in what we do know. We know that our m is 3/2. We just need to find b. We don't have that yet, but what we could do is pick one of these points to be our x and y, and we could solve for b. So maybe this one, it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to put 0 in place of y, and I'm going to put in -2 in place of x, and now we can solve for b. So that'll be let's see, 3/2 times -2 is -3. And then I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So I'm going to get b equals 3. So now that I know m and I know b, I can write my final equation, y equals m, which is 3/2, x plus b, which is 3. Okay, we're going to do the same thing here. So again, let's find the slope first. So we have x1, y1, x2, y2. So m is equal to 3 minus -7 over 1 minus -3. Really, the double negative is addition. So that's going to be 10 over 4, which simplifies to 5 over 2. Okay. So we'll use our equation y equals mx plus b, but we'll replace m with what we already know it is, 5/2. Now I need to find b, so I'm going to pick a point. You could pick the first one or the second one. It does not matter. I'm just going to pick the ones with prettier numbers. So that means 3 is equal to 5 over 2 times 1 plus b. Okay, so 5 over 2 times 1 is 5 over 2. And then I'm going to subtract 5 over 2 from both sides. So 3 minus 5 over 2 is going to be 1/2. So b equals 1/2. I have m and I have b. So y equals 5/2, x plus 1/2.